Rain slid down the cracked window like quiet
We need
tears,
to move forward with
blurring the
plan.
streetlights into soft halos. Grace stood barefoot on the cold kitchen tile. Phone pressed to her ear, heart beating so loud she feared the man on the other end could hear it. Her daughter slept in the next room, one hand curled around a threadbare teddy bear, breathing slow and trusting. On the table lay a leather wallet, heavy, expensive,
I understand,
not
but
hers.
we need to move forward
Grace
with this
swallowed,
today.
staring
I'll
at the
call you
name
back once I have
embossed
more
inside.
details.
This call wasn't brave. It was necessary. And she had no idea it would split her life clean in two. Before we go any further, where are you watching from right now? A small apartment, a quiet room, maybe a crowded bus ride home? Drop your city in the comments. Stories like this remind us how
I
far a
understand the
single moment of
urgency.
honesty can travel.
to move forward with
Grace
the plan.
cleared her throat, fingers trembling as the line clicked. I found your wallet, she said, forcing the words out. I just want to return it. There was a pause, long, heavy, then a voice, low and controlled. You should not have called this number. Her knees weakened, but she stayed standing. I know,
I
she
understand,
whispered,
but we need to move
but it
forward
didn't
with
feel
this
right to
today.
keep it.
I'll call
That
you
was
back
how
once I
Grace
have more
Miller,
details.
a single mother who counted coins before buying milk, first spoke to Michael Russo, a man whose name carried weight in places she had never seen. She didn't know about the whispers that followed him through the city, or the way doors closed softly behind his decisions. She only knew the wallet had fallen near the bus stop where she worked nights cleaning offices.
I understand
And
the
inside were
urgency.
cards, cash,
We
and
need
a
to move
photo of a
forward with
little
the
boy
plan.
with dark eyes. Michael sat in the back of a black car, rain tapping against the roof. He studied the phone like it was a puzzle. Most people ran when they recognized his name. This woman had called. Where are you? He asked. Eastbrook, Grace replied. Near the old hospital. Another pause. Then,
I understand,
stay
but
where
we
you
need to move
are.
forward with this
Grace
today.
hung up and leaned
call you
against the
back once I
counter,
have more details.
breath shallow. She thought of Lily, 6 years old, too smart for her own good, asking questions Grace sometimes couldn't answer. Life had narrowed to routines. Wake early, pack lunches, clean classrooms, smile for Lily even when exhaustion pressed like a weight on her chest. Doing the right thing had never
I
brought
understand
rewards,
the urgency.
but it had let
We
her
need to
sleep
move
at night.
forward with the plan.
Headlights washed over the apartment walls an hour later. A knock. Firm, deliberate. Grace opened the door to a man in a tailored coat, eyes sharp but unreadable. Michael Russo looked nothing like the monster she'd imagined. He glanced past her, noting the worn sofa, the children's drawings taped crookedly to the fridge. She handed him the
understand,
wallet
but we need
with
to move
both
forward with this
hands.
today.
I didn't touch
I'll call you
anything.
back once I have more
I
details.
know, he said quietly, checking. Everything was there. He studied her face, searching for something. Greed, fear, expectation. He found only relief. Thank you, Michael said. It sounded and used. He turned to leave, then stopped. Why? Grace hesitated.
I understand
Because
the
my
urgency.
daughter is watching
We
me,
need to move forward
even
with
when
the
she's
plan.
asleep. Something shifted behind his eyes. He nodded once and walked back into the rain. Days passed. Grace returned to her routines. But fate had noticed her. A week later, Lily collapsed at school, small body shaking as teachers shouted for help. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fear. Doctors
I
spoke in
understand,
careful
but we need to
tones,
move forward with
tests,
this today.
procedures, costs.
I'll call you back once I have
Grace's
more
world
details.
narrowed to the steady beep of machines and the feel of Lily's hand in hers. Bills arrived like threats. Grace skipped meals, sold what little she could. One night, as she stared at the numbers she couldn't make work, her phone rang. Ms. Miller, a familiar voice said, "It's Michael Russo." Her
I
heart
understand
dropped.
the urgency.
Is something wrong?
We need to move forward with the
No,
plan.
he replied. But I think something is very right. We need to talk. She met him at a quiet cafe near the hospital. He listened as she spoke, about Lily, about fear, about the way hope felt dangerous. When she finished, silence sat between them. Michael leaned back, jaw tight. "The boy, my wallet,"
I
he said
understand, but we
softly.
need to move forward
"My
with this
son,
today.
he died
I'll
3
call you
years
back
ago.
once I have more details.
Leukemia." Grace's breath caught. "I couldn't save him," he continued. "But maybe I can help save your daughter." Grace shook her head, tears spilling. "I can't accept that." "You already did," he said gently, "when you chose honesty." The help came quietly. Medical bills
I
handled,
understand the urgency.
specialists arranged.
We need to move
No
forward with
strings
the plan.
spoken aloud. Lily's treatments were long and painful, but hope returned in fragile pieces. Grace watched her daughter smile again, hair wrapped in bright scarves, courage bigger than her small body. Michael visited once, standing awkwardly at the doorway with a toy Lily had admired. She hugged him without fear. He closed his eyes just for a second, but shadows followed Michael. His world demanded payment. Helping Grace meant crossing lines, waking enemies. Choices closed in on him as Lily's health improved. One night, as sirens echoed far away, Michael stood alone on a bridge, staring at the dark water below, wondering if kindness always came at a cost. The wind off the river cut through Michael's coat as he stood on that bridge. City lights trembling across the water like broken promises. He didn't jump. He never had. But some nights, he stood there to remember the weight of choices, the ones that saved lives and the ones that ended them. Grace's face hovered in his thoughts, the way her voice had steadied when fear should have broken it. He turned away from the railing and disappeared into the dark.
I understand.
At the hospital,
we need to move forward with this
Grace slept in a chair beside Lily's bed, spine curved, fingers still wrapped protectively around her daughter's hand. The machines hummed softly, a mechanical lullaby. When Lily stirred, Grace woke instantly. "Mom," Lily whispered, eyes too big for her thin face. "Am I gonna be okay?" Grace smiled with everything she had.
I understand.
Yes,
the urgency.
baby. You're stronger than you think.
With the plan.
Morning brought doctors with charts and cautious optimism. The treatment was working. Slowly, imperfectly, but enough to let hope breathe. Grace cried in the bathroom, silent tears soaking into paper towels. She didn't know how to thank a man like Michael or whether gratitude was even allowed between their worlds. If you were there in that moment, watching someone help when they didn't have to, what would you have done? Would you accept it or push it away out of fear? Be honest in the comments, and if this moment touched you, tap like to say compassion still matters. Michael kept his distance. He sent help through intermediaries, never signing his name, but his presence lingered in small ways. Appointments smoothed over, a nurse who smiled and said, "Everything's arranged." Grace felt it like a hand at her back, steadying her when her legs shook. Trouble, however, has a scent, and it followed Michael home. Across the city, Victor Hale watched numbers scroll across a screen, jaw clenched. Michael's rival had lost ground. Money diverted. Favors called and that didn't benefit the business.
But we need to move
He's
forward
gone
with this
soft, Victor muttered.
I'll call you back once I
Soft
have
men
more
make
details.
mistakes. Orders were whispered. Lines were crossed. Grace sensed a change before she understood it. Michael stopped answering calls. The hospital's ease tightened. One afternoon, two men in dark jackets appeared outside Lily's room, pretending not to watch. Grace's stomach dropped. That night,
I understand.
she stepped into the hallway and dialed the number she promised herself she wouldn't use again. "Please," she said when Michael answered, voice shaking. "If this is because of us, because of me, tell me what to do." There was a long breath on the other end. "It's not your fault," he said, "but it is my problem." He arrived the next day, face drawn, eyes scanning every corner.
I understand, but we
He
need to
spoke
move
briefly
forward
with the
with this
guards,
today.
his tone calm
I'll
but
call you back once
edged.
I have more details.
They left. Grace followed him to the stairwell, heart pounding. "You don't owe us anything," she said. Michael looked at her, really looked. "I owe myself," he replied. "I forgot who I was. You reminded me." The choice he made that night would change everything. Michael met Victor in an abandoned warehouse.
I understand.
Rain drumming on the roof like a
We need to
countdown.
move forward with the
Words
plan.
were exchanged, sharp, final. Michael offered an exit, a clean break. Victor laughed. Guns were drawn. The sound echoed through the city. By morning, Michael Russo was gone, officially missing, unofficially finished. Grace learned the truth from a nurse's whispered condolences and a folded newspaper left on her chair.
understand, but we
Her
need to move
hand
forward
shook
with
as
this
she
today.
read. She
I'll
pressed
call
her
you back
forehead
once
to
I have more
Lily's bed.
details.
Grief crashing in waves she didn't feel entitled to claim. Lily survived. Months later, she rang the bell at the hospital, thin arms raised in victory. Grace clapped through tears, joy and sorrow tangled so tightly she couldn't tell them apart. Michael wasn't there to see it. Years passed.
I
Life grew
understand the
quieter,
urgency.
steadier.
We need to move
Grace
forward
took a
with the
job
plan.
at the school Lily attended. Laughter slowly returning to their home. One spring afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a photo of Michael, older, thinner, standing somewhere sunlit and far away. On the back, 3 words were written in careful ink. Live honestly. Always. Grace smiled,
understand, but we need to move
pressing the
forward
photo
with
to her
this today.
chest.
I'll call you back
Outside,
once I have more
Lily
details.
called her name, running across the yard, alive and radiant. Grace stepped into the sunlight, carrying gratitude and loss together, knowing now that one honest phone call had not only saved a life, but reshaped 2 souls forever. The letter stayed tucked inside Grace's kitchen drawer for years, folded so many times
I
the creases
understand
felt
the
permanent.
urgency.
On hard
We need to move
mornings,
forward with the
she would
plan.
take it out and run her thumb over the ink, as if the words could still breathe. Live honestly. Always. It became her quiet compass, one she never spoke about, not even to Lily. Life didn't turn magical just because Lily survived. Healing came in uneven steps. Some nights, Lily woke screaming from dreams she
I
couldn't
understand,
explain,
but we need to move forward
hands
with this
clawing at
today.
the sheets as if the
I'll call
hospital
you
was
back
still
once I
holding
have
her.
more details.
Grace would sit on the edge of the bed, whispering stories, tracing slow circles on her daughter's back until the shaking stopped. When Lily finally slept, Grace stayed awake, staring into the dark, wondering where Michael was, or if he truly still existed at all. Grace rarely allowed herself to think back to her own beginning,
I understand
but
the
memory has a
urgency.
way of surfacing
We need to move
when
forward
things
with the
finally
plan.
grow quiet. She had been 19 when Lily was born. The father had disappeared the moment responsibility became real, leaving behind a string of excuses and a phone number that no longer worked. Grace moved back into her mother's small apartment, sharing a room with a crib squeezed beside her bed. When her mother died suddenly 2 years
I
later,
understand, but we need to
Grace
move forward
learned
with
what
this
it meant to
today.
stand alone in the world,
I'll call you back once I have
with
more
child who
details.
depended on her for everything. There had been moments when kindness saved her then, too. A neighbor who watched Lily when Grace worked late. A teacher who slipped extra snacks into Lily's backpack. People who would never know how close she came to breaking. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would, right
I
when you
understand
needed
the
it most?
urgency.
If
We
so,
need to move
write
forward
yes
with the plan.
and share their name in the comments. Sometimes gratitude deserves to be spoken out loud. Michael had become one of those people. Unexpected, complicated, and unforgettable. Lily grew stronger with time. Her laughter came easier, her steps steadier. At 12, she cut her hair short by choice, donating it with a fierce smile
I
that made
understand,
Grace's
but we need
chest
to move
ache
forward
with
with this
pride.
today.
I don't want it to
I'll
scare
call
me
you back
anymore,
once I have more
Lily
details.
said simply. Grace hugged her, realizing her daughter had learned courage not from survival, but from watching it modeled. Then, one autumn afternoon, the past knocked again, softly, almost politely. Grace was closing the school library when she noticed a man waiting near the entrance. He wore a baseball cap
understand the
pulled
urgency.
low,
We need to
posture
move
careful,
forward with the plan.
as if he didn't want to be recognized. Something about the stillness of him made her pause. Grace, he said. Her breath caught. The voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. Michael? The name slipped out before she could stop it. He nodded once, eyes searching her face with something like fear. I wasn't sure you want to see me.
I understand, but
For
we
a
need
moment,
to move forward with this
the
today.
room felt too
call
small
you
for
back
everything
once I have
rushing
more
back.
details.
Hospital lights, rain-soaked streets, a bridge at night. Grace leaned against a table to steady herself. You're alive, she whispered. I had to disappear, he said. For a long time. He hesitated. I followed Lily's progress from a distance. I never wanted to bring trouble back to
I
you.
understand the urgency.
Grace studied him.
We need to
The
move
sharp
forward with
edges
the
were
plan.
softer now. Time had carved humility into his features. She's doing well, Grace said. She's brave. Michael smiled, eyes wet. She always was. They sat in the quiet library, dust motes floating in late sunlight. Michael spoke of leaving everything behind, of nights spent questioning
understand,
whether
but we need to
redemption
move
was something a
forward with this
man like
today.
him was allowed to
I'll call you
want.
back once I have more
Grace
details.
listened, not judging, not forgiving outright, just witnessing. I don't expect anything, Michael said finally. I just needed you to know you changed me. Grace took a long breath. You changed us too, she said. But some changes don't need to last forever to matter. Outside, Lily waited in the
understand
car,
the urgency.
scrolling on her phone.
We need to move forward
Grace
with the
glanced at
plan.
the window, then back at Michael. She doesn't know who you are, Grace said gently. Not the whole story. Michael nodded. She doesn't need to. As he stood to leave, he paused. I'm trying to live honestly now, he said. Like you told me without ever saying it. Grace watched him walk away, the weight
I
of years
understand,
settling
but we need to move
softly
forward with
instead
this
of
today.
sharply this time.
I'll call you
For
back
the first
once I have more
time,
details.
the past didn't feel like an open wound. It felt like a scar, proof of pain, but also of survival. That night, Grace returned home to Lily humming in the kitchen, music playing too loud. Grace leaned in the doorway, absorbing the ordinary miracle of it all. The letter stayed in the drawer. It didn't need to be read anymore. Some connections
Move
don't
forward with
end.
the plan.
They simply transform, quietly shaping who we become, long after the moment that brought us together fades into memory. The seasons turned gently after that night, as if the world itself had decided to soften its grip. Grace settled back into routine, but something inside her had shifted. The fear that once lived in her chest,
I understand,
tight and
but we need to
constant,
move forward
had
with this
loosened,
today.
not
I'll call
vanished,
you back once I
just
have more
quieter.
details.
She laughed more easily now, slept more deeply, and when she caught a reflection in shop windows, she no longer saw only exhaustion. She saw endurance. Lily noticed at first. "You're different lately," Lily said one evening as they folded laundry together. The room smelled of clean cotton and warm soap. Grace smiled. "Different good or different weird?" Lily grinned. "Different strong." Grace paused, a towel half folded in her hands. Children had a way of naming truths adults dance around. "Maybe I finally learned how to breathe," Grace said. At school, Grace became the person others leaned on. A new teacher, crying quietly in the staff bathroom. A student staying late because home felt too loud. Grace didn't fix their problems. She listened. Sometimes that was enough. She understood now how one small kindness could ripple outward, unseen but powerful. Michael kept his distance, just as promised. Once every few months, a postcard arrived. No return address, just a sentence. A beach at sunrise. A mountain road. A coffee cup by a window somewhere far away. Proof of life. Proof of effort. Grace kept him in the same drawer as a letter, not out of longing, but respect. Then came the night the past tried to reclaim its voice. Grace was locking up the school when she heard shouting outside, angry, drunk, familiar in the worst way. A man stood under the streetlight, older but unmistakable. Lily's father. "Grace," he called, swaying slightly. "You think you can just erase me?" Her stomach clenched. Years collapsed into seconds. She stepped back inside, heart racing, but he followed, pushing the door before it closed. "I heard your kid's doing great," he sneered. "Funny how you didn't need me after all." Grace felt the old fear stir, but it didn't take control. She stood straighter. "You need to leave," she said calmly. "Now." He laughed, bitter. "You think you're better than me?" Before she could answer, a security guard appeared, firm and unyielding, escorting the man out as he cursed into the night. Grace's knees weakened only after the door clicked shut. She sat alone for a long moment, shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that she had faced a ghost and it no longer owned her. "Now it's your turn. Pause for a second and think. What's one small good thing you've done recently, even if no one noticed? Share below. Sometimes telling it out loud reminds others that kindness still lives among us. Grace told Lily the truth that night. Not every detail, but enough. About her father, about choices, about absence. Lily listened quietly, then surprised her. "I already know what kind of man I want to be around," Lily said. "The ones who stay." Grace hugged her, tears slipping free. In that moment, she understood the real legacy Michael had helped shape. Not money, not protection, but clarity. Weeks later, Michael returned one last time. He didn't come to the school. He waited across the street, respectful, distant. Grace crossed him, the air cool with approaching winter. "I'm leaving the country," he said. "For good this time." Grace nodded. "That sounds like honesty." He smiled faintly. "You were right. It's harder than it looks." They didn't hug. They didn't promise to stay in touch. Some bonds didn't need constant tending. Michael glanced past her, toward the lit windows of a school. "She's safe," he said. "Yes," Grace replied. "And so are you." As he walked away, Grace felt no ache, only gratitude. The kind that settles warm and steady, like a quiet fire. Later that night, She stood at the kitchen sink, watching snow begin to fall, each flake fragile and brave. Lily laughed from the living room, music playing too loud again. Grace realized then that redemption wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It arrived softly, through choices repeated daily, until one day you looked around and understood you were living a life built not on fear, but on compassion. Winter settled fully over the city, turning streets into mirrors of ice and light. Grace learned the rhythm of it. The extra minutes needed in the morning, the way cold crept into bones after sunset. Lily loved the snow. She pressed her hands against the window each morning, cheeks flushed with excitement, as if every flake were a promise. One evening, on the way home from the grocery store, Grace slipped on a patch of ice. Pain shot up her leg, sharp and unforgiving. She lay there for a moment, breath knocked out of her, staring at the gray sky. A stranger rushed over, offering a hand. Concern etched across his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. Grace nodded, wincing as she stood. "I will be. Thank you." That night, her knees swollen and aching, she sat at the table while Lily carefully wrapped it with an old scarf. "You always help people," Lily said, concentrating hard. "They help you back." Grace smiled softly. That's how it should be. But life has a way of testing lessons just when we think we've learned them. A letter arrived from the hospital, an annual follow-up reminder. Routine, the doctor had said. Still, Grace felt her chest tighten as they walked through the familiar doors. The smell, the echoing halls. Lily's hand squeezed hers, reassuring this time. The test took longer than expected. A doctor frowned at a chart, excused himself, returned with another. Grace felt the old fear crawl up her spine, slow and cold. "We found something," the doctor said carefully. "It may be nothing, but we need to monitor it closely." The word monitor landed heavy. Lily watched Grace's face, reading between the lines. On the drive home, neither of them spoke. That night, Grace sat alone in the dark, the letter from years ago open in her hands. For the first time in a long while, she let herself cry, not loudly, not dramatically, but in steady, silent waves. She wasn't afraid of pain anymore. She was afraid of hope being taken away again. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart. Sometimes a single symbol says what our hearts can't put into words. Days stretched into weeks. Appointments. Waiting rooms. Smiles held together with effort. Grace kept moving, packing lunches, showing up at work, listening to others' problems while holding her own close and quiet. Michael sent no postcards now. She didn't expect them. Some chapters closed without ceremony. Then came the call. "It's benign," the doctor said. "We're confident. No treatment needed right now." Grace sank into a chair, laughter and sobs colliding in her chest. When she told Lily, her daughter exhaled a breath she'd clearly been holding. They celebrated with cheap pizza and a movie on the couch. Feet tangled together, warmth layered over lingering fear. That night, as Lily slept, Grace stepped onto the balcony. The city hummed below, alive and indifferent. She thought of the bridge Michael once stood on, of the phone call that had started everything, of how close life had come, so many times, to breaking them. Grace understood something then, not as a lesson, but as a truth settled deep in her bones. Kindness didn't erase pain. It didn't protect you from loss. But it changed how you carried it. It gave pain a place to rest. She went back inside, turned off the light, and sat beside Lily's bed, watching her daughter breathe, steady, peaceful, alive. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering old footprints, making the city new again, one quiet moment at a time. Spring returned slowly, almost cautiously, as if the world itself was asking permission to bloom again. Trees along the sidewalks budded with pale green, and the city shook off winter in uneven patches. Grace walked more. She let the sun touch her face longer than necessary. Every ordinary day felt quietly earned. Lily was 14 now, taller, sharper, her humor dry and unexpected. She carried the past lightly, not because it was small, but because it no longer owned her. At school, she volunteered in the nurse's office, helping younger kids who scraped knees or felt sick. Grace watched her from a distance once, heart full, Realizing pain had not hardened her daughter, it had refined her. Then, one afternoon, the phone rang again. Grace almost didn't answer. Unknown number. The past had taught her caution. But something, instinct, maybe, made her swipe. Grace, a man said, voice tense. It's Daniel Cross. I worked with Michael. Her chest tightened. Is he okay? A pause. He's alive, but he's in trouble. The story spilled out in fragments. Michael had tried to leave his old world behind completely, but Victor Hale hadn't been the only enemy. Loose ends had a way of tightening. Michael had been found, cornered, betrayed by someone he once protected. They want leverage, Daniel said. They know about you, about Lily. The room felt suddenly smaller. What do they want? Grace asked. Michael's turning himself in, Daniel said. Federal cooperation. Names. Records. Everything. But there's a condition. Grace closed her eyes. They want me. They want your forgiveness, Daniel said quietly. On record. Public. They want proof he's not lying when he says he's changed. Silence stretched. Grace's mind raced, not with fear, but with memory. Rain on a window, a wallet on a table, a bridge at night, a man who helped without asking to be redeemed. That evening, Grace sat across from Lily at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around cooling tea. She told her everything, finally, fully, the danger, the past, the man who had saved her life in ways Lily had never known. Lily listened without interruption. When Grace finished, she asked one question. Did he ever hurt you? No, Grace said immediately. Did he ever scare you? Grace thought. Once. When I didn't understand him. Lily nodded. And after? He protected us. Lily leaned back, considering. Then why are you asking me what to do? Grace's voice broke. Because forgiveness isn't just mine anymore. Be honest. Could you forgive someone with a past that dark, even if they changed? Type forgive if you think you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. The decision came quietly, without drama. Grace agreed. The hearing room was cold, impersonal. Cameras waited. Reporters whispered. Grace sat straight, heart steady in her chest. Michael was brought in last, older again, thinner, but standing tall. When he saw her, something like relief crossed his face. Grace spoke clearly. About the wallet. About the hospital. About help given without expectation. She didn't excuse his crimes. She didn't erase his past. She spoke only of the truth. That people were not frozen in their worst moments. Michael listened, eyes wet, hands clenched. When it was over, he nodded to her once. No words passed between them. They weren't needed. The fallout was immediate. Arrests. Headlines. Michael entered witness protection, this time permanently. His sentence was reduced, but not erased. Accountability remained. Weeks later, a letter arrived through official channels. Inside a single page, I accepted the consequences. That's part of honesty too. Thank you for showing the world I wasn't only what I'd done wrong. Grace folded the letter, calm settling over her like a deep breath. The past no longer chased her. It had finally caught up and stopped. Outside, Lily waited, backpack slung over one shoulder, ready for future. Grace joined her, hand brushing her daughter's arm as they walked forward together, toward whatever came next. Time moved differently after the hearing, less jagged, more deliberate. The city felt calmer, or maybe Grace had learned how to walk through it without flinching. Headlines faded. Names were replaced by newer scandals. The world, relentless and indifferent, kept going. So, did they? Lily started high school that fall. On her first morning, she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her jacket, nerves flickering behind confidence. Grace watched from the doorway, remembering a tiny girl with a hospital bracelet slipping off her wrist. You okay? Grace asked. Lily smirked. I think I'm more scared of algebra than anything else. Grace laughed, a sound that once felt rare. Now it came easily. They walked to the bus stop together. When the bus pulled away, Lily waved to the window, big, unashamed. Grace waved back until it disappeared, then stood there a moment longer, letting the quiet settle. She worked more hours now, not because she had to survive, but because she wanted to build a future with room to breathe. She took evening classes, learning counseling skills, drawn naturally toward helping others navigate pain. It felt like an extension of everything she'd lived through, not a burden, but a calling. One night, a woman stayed late after a support group Grace facilitated. Her hands shook as she spoke about leaving an abusive relationship, about fear masquerading as love. "How did you know you'd be okay?" the woman asked. Grace didn't answer right away. She thought of Michael behind glass, of Lily asleep in the next room, of herself, years ago, standing barefoot on cold tile with a phone in her hand. "I didn't," Grace said honestly. "I just knew staying silent would hurt more." The woman nodded, tears falling. Sometimes truth was the only gift you could offer. At home, Lily filled the walls with life. Music drifting under doors, laughter from friends sprawled across the living room floor, school projects taped beside old drawings. Grace let the noise stay. It reminded her they were alive. One evening, as they cooked dinner together, Lily asked casually, "Do you think people can really change?" Grace paused, stirring the pot. "I think people can choose differently," she said, over and over again. "That's what change looks like." Lily considered this. "Then I want to do that. Choose good." Grace smiled, eyes stinging. "You already are." They never spoke Michael's name often. He existed like a quiet thread woven through their story. Not the center, not forgotten. Grace received one final message through secure channels months later. "No address. No future contact. I volunteer now. Teaching kids who grew up where I did. I don't tell them who I was. I show them who I'm trying to be." Grace closed her eyes, gratitude warming her chest. Redemption, she realized, didn't require proximity. It required intention. That winter, Lily caught the flu. Nothing serious, but enough to bring old fears knocking. Grace sat beside her bed, listening to her breathe, reminding herself of everything they'd survived. "You're staring again," Lily murmured. Grace smiled. "Just checking that you're real." "I am," Lily said sleepily. "If you believe love still wins, even after loss, fear, and mistakes, comment, amen. Let's fill this moment with hope. Someone reading this right now might need to see it." Spring returned once more, brighter than before. Grace and Lily planted flowers on the balcony, yellow and white, stubborn things that leaned toward the sun. Grace watched Lily laugh as dirt smudged her hands, joy uncomplicated. Grace understood now. Hope wasn't loud optimism. It was waking up and choosing care. It was forgiving without forgetting. It was standing still long enough to let the past loosen its grip. One afternoon, as Grace locked at the community center, she noticed a wallet on the sidewalk near the door. Worn. Ordinary. She picked it up, heart skipping, not with fear, but with recognition. Inside was a driver's license, a few dollars, a photo of a smiling family. Grace smiled softly. She knew exactly what to do. And somewhere, whether in a quiet room, a distant classroom, or behind protective walls, a man who had once been lost continued choosing honesty, one day at a time. The world didn't change all at once, but it changed enough because one woman made a call and kept making the same choice again and again. Grace stood there for a long moment, the wallet resting in her palm, its edges worn smooth by years of use. Cars passed behind her, tires whispering against pavement. Somewhere nearby, a siren rose and faded, life moving forward, as it always did. She didn't open the wallet right away. Instead, she looked up at the sky, soft blue, streaked with thin clouds, and felt something settle deep inside her. Not excitement, not fear, peace. The kind that only comes when you recognize a familiar crossroads and realize you already know who you are. She stepped back inside the community center, found a desk, and gently opened the wallet. A name, an address not far away, a grocery store loyalty card. Ordinary life, folded and carried. Grace smiled to herself. No drama, no danger, just a simple chance to do the right thing. That evening, She and Lily walked together to return it. The apartment building was old but clean, the hallway lit by a single buzzing bulb. A tired-looking man opened the door. Confusion turned to shock when he saw what Grace held out. I thought I lost that forever, he said, voice thick. Thank you. You don't know what this means. Grace did know. She nodded gently. Someone once did the same for me, she replied. They walked home under the glow of streetlights. Lily bumped her shoulder playfully. You didn't even hesitate, she said. Grace smiled. Neither did you. They reached their building, climbing the stairs side by side. At the door, Lily stopped. Mom. Yes. I'm glad you're my example. Grace's throat tightened. She pulled Lily into a hug, holding her longer than usual. I'm glad you're my reason. Later that night, when the apartment was quiet, Grace sat alone at the kitchen table. The drawer was still there, but she didn't open it anymore. The letter, the postcards, the memories, they lived inside her now, not as weight, but as grounding. She thought of Michael, of the bridge, of the courtroom, of the children he taught now. Kids who would never know his worst mistakes, only the patience in his voice and the steadiness of his hands. She hoped he felt something close to what she felt now. Enough forgiveness to move forward. Enough accountability to stay honest. Enough love to keep choosing kindness, even when it was inconvenient. If the story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the woman who carried fear, loss, and responsibility and still chose compassion. One simple click can be your way of saying, I felt this, I saw her, and maybe I'll try to be that kind too. Grace turned off the light and went to bed, listening to Lily's quiet breathing through the wall. Tomorrow would bring its own worries, bills, schedules, small frustrations. But it would also bring chances, moments, choices. And that was a moral she lived by now, without needing to say it out loud. You don't need power to change a life. You don't need wealth to leave a mark. Sometimes all it takes is honesty and the courage to make the call.